Welcome everyone and good morning. My name is Paulette Maluski with Kirkwood Corporate Training. I'd like to welcome you to part one in our three-part webinar series on apprenticeships. Mark your calendars because you are the first to know that part two is this same day and same time next week. So Tuesday, May 19th at 9 a.m. is part two of this series, and we hope you'll join us. The registration link will be at the last slide of this morning's PowerPoint. Part two is Kirkwood's role and how we support your companies if you do pursue an apprenticeship. Your presenter today, I'm delighted to introduce you, is Becky Weininger. Becky is also with Kirkwood Corporate Training, and she's our project manager of workforce initiatives. She has a great story to tell because she has helped several local companies incorporate apprenticeships as a solution for succession planning and upskilling their current workforce. Today's session will be interactive. We're going to use Zoom's chat feature for any questions you might have. Thank you, Becky, for joining us today. I've certainly learned a lot from you, and I'm sure our listeners are looking forward to hearing how you've helped strengthen businesses through developing employers and creating customized growth and educational opportunities. On to you, Becky.
Great, thank you, Paulette. Thank you all for joining us today for the first of our three-part series on apprenticeships. Our next 20 to 25 minutes, we'll learn about current conditions that are perfect for registered apprenticeship. We'll learn about the 5 parts of a registered apprenticeship and briefly explain standards and core competencies. All right, so some of the facts that make apprenticeship attractive is that the retention rate after completing an apprenticeship, according to the Department of Labor, is 94%. So it's really high. The other attraction is that businesses that incorporate an apprenticeship into their human resources plan, 97% recommend it. So let's talk a little bit more about why. Why apprenticeships and why now? There are so many things happening in our world. Within industry, we see workers moving from one company to another. There's never enough skilled employees so that all the companies are full. When an employee leaves, that cost of turnover is really high. I read an article indicating that for a $10 an hour worker, the cost is between $3,000 to $4,000. But most employers that I've spoken with have actually said it's much higher than that. We also have an aging workforce where almost 1 in 4 people is over the age of 55. Those individuals are not only proven workers, but the vast knowledge that they hold is unbelievable. What is your plan for how you will capture the knowledge these individuals have before they leave? Succession planning is really important, and apprenticeship can be a great way to do that. Within our economy, the number of individuals having to work multiple jobs to make ends meet has continued. The exact numbers are difficult to find due to an increase in gigs like Uber driving and food delivery. Finally, we also have seen the 4-year education and living expenses estimated to be over $83,000. Believe it or not, that's actually a 2019 Iowa figure. So we've got our young adults trying to find solutions to this debt. And all these factors are indicating the need for registered apprenticeships. Apprenticeships have bipartisan support. It's something that both sides are agreeing to, and that's an awesome thing these days. In 2014, it was an initiative put forth by the Obama administration. The Trump administration has also continued to support it. Because after all, if you go back in time, even President Trump has had his own apprentices in his famous show. The last email I received indicated that the government so far has put nearly $1 billion towards apprenticeship growth. So let's talk about why apprenticeships is seen as a solution. Apprenticeship is a good solution because it helps to eliminate barriers to gaining new skills. You really can't stop working 2 jobs when you're paying the bills to pay for a class where you spend so many hours not earning pay. That's just not something a person in that position can do. They can't even really consider doing that. But when you lift the cost off their shoulders and you give them a full-time job, they can learn the new skills to do that new job, and they'll do it really well. With gaining the education and training, the loyalty that they feel towards the employer grows. And then finally, it results in reducing the turnover rate. So in a nutshell, a registered apprenticeship is equal to a paid job plus education resulting in certification. So we're getting ready to move into the 5 parts of the registered apprenticeship. So a registered apprenticeship means that the Department of Labor has reviewed and approved the standards created. There are 5 parts to a registered apprenticeship. The most important is the business, because without an employer, the apprentice is merely a student. Then the business appoints to one of their experienced workers to be the mentor. Many times this is already happening when a business hires a new person. There's another person that they're working with that shows them the ropes, that's available for questions and provides guidance. This is really that on-the-job training, which averages about 2,000 hours a year. Our third part is that structured learning part. Obviously, here at Kirkwood, we like to be considered the related training and instruction provider. The average amount of time for that is 144 hours per year. It can be class or lab time. It's really that more formal training in a safe environment. The fourth element is that there should be milestones for growth in wages as they complete the apprenticeship. This is generally happening in business as well. Finally, the Department of Labor requires reporting, and once that is completed, they provide the national certification for the occupation. So before starting an apprenticeship, it's critical to find out if the occupation is approved for a registered apprenticeship by the Department of Labor. Not every occupation is approved for an apprenticeship. The Department of Labor assesses the amount of skill and knowledge needed to be competent for the occupation. Apprenticeships range in years from 1 year, like the CNA apprenticeship, all the way to 6 years, which is an electrician. There are over 1,300 occupations on the last list. And it's important to know that even if your specific job title isn't listed, the ONET can provide alternate occupation titles that may be very similar. Recently, we had one that the job title was automation technician, and the ONET referenced electromechanical technician. And now we are using that occupation. So in your chat box, if you think you have some ideas on occupations that are approved, let's go ahead and throw them in there. This is a very long list, and it reaches almost every industry one way or another. We've got welder popping in there, and construction definitely. We've got animal trainer, customer service rep. The traditional ones, carpenter, pipe fitter. We've got CNC machinists coming in our list over there. Welding was mentioned, both in the list and out there. Truck driving and IT support, just to name a few. And yes, we do hit in the healthcare industry as well with nursing and CNAs. All right, thanks guys, I appreciate the participation. So each year, there are 2 components in a single year for an apprenticeship. The first component we'll talk about is what we call RTI. It is the related training and instruction. This averages about 144 to 200 hours per year. However, there's different ways you can do the training. Some are front loaded, so you may have a year that's over 500 hours of training, but then another year where it's 0. So it averages out to be 144 to 200 hours per year. The second component is that on-the-job training. The on-the-job hours, OJT as it's referred, is required about 1,800 to 2,000 hours per year. And of course, if you're like me, you've already done that math and you're saying, wow, that might actually end up being more than a full year's worth of work. And that's true. Sometimes it does take a little longer to get all those hours in. So you heard me say that the mentor is an important part of the puzzle, and that is true because they are a critical part of the on-the-job learning. It needs to be a 1-to-1 ratio. This is one mentor for each apprentice. The Department of Labor looks for mentors to be a seasoned professional, or if you're asking about one of the state licensed occupations for the trades, it's often referred to as a journeyman. That's someone who's already completed the apprenticeship. However, this shouldn't keep any business from starting an apprenticeship. Your business likely has someone who has performed in a high level for that position for years, and therefore the year's experience would qualify. The mentor is really that person responsible for teaching them how to do the work at your business using your business rules. They provide guidance, they answer questions, and they provide feedback. Now, you don't have to have them sitting side by side or with them all the time, because we know that that's not realistic in a lot of settings, but they're there to help as needed, and they're responsible for filling out that annual skills sheet. When we discuss wage compensation, it's actually a backwards process. You look at what someone makes in the position that has the skills and then do stair steps to get to it. So we've got the number of years that the apprenticeship lasts contributes to figuring that out. In this example, the hourly wage of the skilled person is $18 an hour. This person at the end of their apprenticeship will make $18. So for year one, when they are hired at 60% of the starting amount, you see that they're hired at $10.80. They are raised after 1 year to $14.40, which is 80%. And then upon completion, at the end of that second year, they are bumped up to the $18 per hour rate. So the big rule with this is you can't go below that minimum wage, even if it is 60% of the skilled wage. And again, as I said, the number of years play a part as well. Most apprentices are gaining wage growth about every 6 months or annually. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about standards. Standards is the name given to the official document submitted for approval to the Department of Labor. This is that how-to in managing the apprenticeship, from requirements to get into the apprenticeship, to equal opportunity, safety and health information. Every registered apprenticeship has one. They become public information, though they are not attached by name. So it just means that they can see samples of standards as you can access the Department of Labor for occupations. There are available resources to help with creating this document that I'll share towards the end of the presentation. In my mind, the nuts and bolts of any apprenticeship are found in the appendices. This includes the core competencies for related training and on-the-job processes. So let's talk about core competencies. These are the skills and knowledge that is expected for the occupation and identified under on-the-job training or related training and instruction. What is interesting is that you can go really specific. I've seen a standards document that had 300 plus specific competencies. And then I've also seen one that was 4 to 6 topics broken down by hours of time. Specifics can be good for a business doing their own apprenticeship, or having a broader list can create flexibility for the business through time. So when developing the instructional or curriculum plan to meet the RTI, the core competencies are crucial in our planning process. Finally, the skill sheets that mentors are signing off on each year are based on the core competencies in the certification through the Department of Labor can only occur if the apprenticeship is registered and if the proper documentation is provided. The business has an agreement to fill out that includes their tax ID and their wages for that position. The important thing to remember when you're providing wages is to provide what would be your minimum schedule so that you have that flexibility of hiring someone higher should you have a reason to. Apprentices also have to fill out a form that indicates their intention to start and finish an apprenticeship. And finally, our hours of RTI and OJT, or those hours worked, and the skills sheet are submitted annually. All right. So we have a few different types of apprenticeships, and I'll just talk briefly about those. Our time-based is a very traditional approach to the apprenticeship concept. It really means that you've needed to spend so much time spent doing the task repetitiously. A competency-based approach differs slightly in that you can establish competency to a task without having a specific time requirement to the task. But the general amount of hours to be worked as a whole is still required. So the example I like to use is, I don't need to use a nail gun for 100 hours. If I'm competent in 20 hours, that's okay. But I'm still going to need to work 2,000 hours to complete my year. A hybrid is a combination of the two. And this would be like when, I'm thinking along the lines of, if you have a minimum amount of time for safety training, but competency is still incorporated for some of those skills as they're going through the process. So I have a video that I'd like to share that's from one of the leaders of community college apprenticeship programs. I felt this video explains really well one way that an apprenticeship can work. So that talks a little bit about one of the ways that you can do an apprenticeship with the community college like Kirkwood. So I mentioned earlier, I wanted to share that there are several people in our area that can help with setting up apprenticeships. We've got Kate Pine at Iowa Works, as well as in the Department of Labor, Jim Whiteman. And of course, don't hesitate to reach out to me as well. I know we've got just a few minutes left for some questions. And I know I also wanted to make sure I just put up so that you guys are aware. Our second webinar is next Tuesday, same time at 9 a.m., May 19th. We've got the link up at the top there, and we'll follow up with an email that includes the recording of this and the link to the next presentation. We'll talk a little bit about a group consortium for shared apprenticeship programs. We'll talk about Kirkwood support for related training and instruction, and we'll also talk about how you can find candidates when you are hiring apprentices. We hope that you can all make it, but right now let's go to those questions. Paulette, what do we have?
Thanks for asking, Becky. All right, question number one is, where can we find the list of registered apprenticeships?
So apprenticeships.gov has a list of all the occupations as well as all the registered apprenticeships that are in the area. So you can search by occupation and the area.
Okay, so just to repeat, that was apprenticeships.gov.
Yep,
okay.
Gov.
Terrific. And Madison has asked us, do the apprentices have to be college students? Can they be high schoolers, alumni? And she didn't ask, can they be current employees, prospective employees? Can you give us a little background on who the apprentices can be?
Right, so that next webinar, we're going to talk more about that. And we'll go into a lot more detail, as well as you can have high schoolers, you can have college students. There's a lot of different opportunities for who you can work with as an apprentice.
Great. Next question. Okay, not seeing any. Please keep in mind, you can send your questions directly to Becky at becky.weininger, W-E-I-N-I-N-G-E-R, at kirkwood.edu. That was on the previous screen, but again, becky.weininger, W-E-I-N-I-N-G-E-R, at kirkwood.edu. She's happy to answer questions, meet with you. Part 2 is how Kirkwood can support you. And part 3 of the webinar is what you have to do to get started. So we'd love to further this conversation. In the upper right-hand corner is the registration. It's kind of lengthy, so we're going to send everyone who's in attendance today the link to this recording, as well as to part 2 if you want to register and join us there. So thanks everyone for your time today. We greatly appreciate your attention and participation.